I know some of you may be new to Work Avenue, so just to give you a bit of background about us. We're a charity based in Finchley, but all our services are online now, and we help people to earn a living. So that could be through going into work, or it could be through creating a business. So I'm in the employment advice team, and I help with everything to do with looking for a job or careers advice. We help people from all ages and backgrounds. So we help people leaving school to university and to later in life. Just in 2020, we had over 2,000 people access our services, and you can see a nice picture of us on here. 1,495 of them were employment service clients alone. So we're a very busy team, and we're really dedicated to helping students and graduates throughout their career. You might have seen already, we have a section on our website specifically dedicated to graduates. So the presentation today is going to be talking about your career after graduation, and we have about 1 hour, so we won't go on until past 2:30, and there'll be a bit of time to ask any questions at the end, but feel free to put any questions in the chat or shout out if you've got anything you want to say in the meantime. So just to tell you a bit more about the support that we offer to graduates. So we have one-to-one tailored guidance. So if you need any help with your career choice or help with looking for jobs, we have a team of qualified careers advisors that can give you a one-to-one session via Zoom. If you have an interview coming up, then just let us know and we can do a mock interview with you. Also, for some of you that are thinking of going on to things like master's programs, we offer education support. So we help with things like applying for a student loan, or help applying to things like PGCs or any kind of postgraduate courses. We also have a jobs board on our website. So we have relationships with employers, mainly in the community. And even though we're not a recruitment agency, we can put people forward for jobs or help them to apply with the jobs on our jobs board. You can find that on our website under the job section. And typically 1 in 3 clients that gets an interview for one of our jobs gets the job. So really high statistics. We also offer a variety of workshops and webinars. So we have student and graduate networking events which take place in the spring term. But we also have an event section on our site where you can register for some of our workshops, such as our CV workshop, networking workshop, LinkedIn workshop. So just for example, we have a LinkedIn workshop for tomorrow, which you're more than welcome to sign up for. So just to give you a bit of an introduction to me. So my name's Hannah Dahan. I'm one of the advisors at Work Avenue, working in the employment advice team. Sorry, can I just ask everybody to put themselves on mute if you have a bit of noise in the background? Thank you. So I did my degree and graduated in 2009. I studied information and communications for my undergraduate. And like some of you, I wasn't really sure about what to do next. So I looked into a few options. So I was thinking of traveling, I was thinking of further study, I was thinking of going straight into a graduate job. And actually a course came up near me, which was a master's level course in careers guidance that I went on to do in Nottingham. And after qualifying, I moved to London and I started my career working as a careers advisor. So I started off working in connection centres, dealing with young people, helping them get into work, apprenticeships or further study. And then ever since then, I've been working in the education sector, mainly helping students. And after that, I've been working for Work Avenue since January 2020. So I started just before the pandemic. So that's a bit about me. And I really enjoy working with students and helping them throughout their career. But just to also introduce you to one of my colleagues that's here today called Yael Solomons, who can tell you a little bit more about herself and our jobs board.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Hannah. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Yael. I have been at Work Avenue, actually just past my 10-year anniversary here yesterday. Thank you. My main role is I look after the jobs board. So I speak to all of the employers who advertise vacancies with Work Avenue and try and recommend clients that we meet for those roles. And this is in addition to some of the advisory work and interview practice that I do with clients as well. We do have a range of roles on our jobs board. If any of you have finished university, graduated, and you are actively looking for work at the moment, I would definitely recommend you take a look on our jobs board. We do have some graduate type positions there, or I'm very happy to discuss individually with people afterwards as well. Like Hannah, I did a degree in law, actually, decided after that I didn't want to be a lawyer, thought about what to do next, took an HR qualification, and then joined Work Avenue in my capacity here, which is great. So nice to have you all today.
Thanks, yeah. So for those of you that are just graduating, or even some of you that might have just graduated recently, you've got lots of options for after your degree rather than just going straight into a job. So it would be useful just to kind of get in the chat, what sort of things have you thought about doing next? So feel free to share your ideas in the chat, and then we'll go into some of them in more detail. Yeah, have we had any responses in the chat? Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
I can't see any responses at the moment. I don't know if everyone wants to, if you look at the options on this diagram, get an idea of what people are thinking about. If you want to post that in the chat.
So no problem. So we're going to talk about the options that you have after your, oh, we've had one message in the chat. So somebody's thinking of taking a year out. Excellent. So things that you could be doing next. You could be going into a graduate job and finding your job after graduation. You could be going on to postgraduate study. So for example, you might want to do a master's, you might want to do a professional qualification, you might want to do something like a PGC in teaching, you might want to get into law and do something like an SQE, etc. You might want to do a more structured graduate training, so a graduate scheme or a graduate apprenticeship. So we're going to be looking more into graduate jobs, graduate schemes, etc. Later in the presentation. You might want to start up a business. So if anybody's thinking of starting up a business, a really good starting point would be to speak to one of our business advisors, and they'd really be happy to help you and talk you through. You might be thinking of taking a year out and, for example, traveling, obviously COVID allowing, or you might want to do things like volunteer or work abroad, just to kind of get more of an idea of what your options are and what you're looking for, and take some time out to think and build on your experience. You might want to go on to further training. So you can, for example, do a course that isn't a master's. So we have on our website a selection of courses under the wage section that you could look at, or you might want to do something like a CIPD qualification, or for example, you might want to get into bookkeeping and just do a bookkeeping course. Or you could go on and if you don't necessarily have so much experience, you might want to do something like an internship or work experience. And that looks really good on your CV, especially if you want to get into something competitive, like such as some of the creative routes. So some of you might be thinking, I don't know what I want to do, like this is all really overwhelming. So if you're in that position, or even if you know what you want to do, think about your skills and your strengths and what you enjoy doing. What did you enjoy doing during your course? What have you enjoyed doing during your work experience? What are you good at? And a really good starting point is the Prospects website. If you go to the planner section, then there's a careers quiz that you can take. And it suggests some careers based on what you like, what you dislike, what you're interested in. Another good section of that same website is the Prospect site job profiles. And that section allows you to research different jobs and how to get into them and what skills you need for every job, and also what you'd be doing in each job. So you can get an idea of more of what you're interested in and how to get where you want to be. So other ways of researching your career is attending any careers fairs that your university holds. And like I mentioned before, Work Avenue are running networking events with employers in the spring term. Speak to your Work Avenue advisor about what steps you could take next, as well as your university career service. So really great news for graduates. Despite the pandemic, there are more jobs now than ever. So on our jobs board alone, we have 115 vacancies at the moment. According to a recent survey of what graduates do, 135 student employers that were interviewed said that 48% were recruiting the same number as grads as last year, and 36% were actually hiring more, and 18% were increasing their intake by at least 10%. And then lots of other stats on here, which shows you kind of that the market is really good for graduates, and it's a great time to be a graduate. So if you're thinking of going straight into work, you might be wondering, should I do a graduate job or a graduate scheme, or what do they actually mean? So a graduate scheme is typically in the larger companies, and they have set deadlines, and you can usually have to apply quite early. So for some of them, you might even have started applying as early as September in your final year. So they're high quality and well structured, and you can gain a professional qualification at the same time in many cases. So for example, you might be doing an ACCA or any kind of professional qualification as part of your training. They're very competitive and highly sought after. So the process is very competitive. You might be invited to assessment centres, you might have to do psychometric tests. If you get onto a graduate scheme, there's no guarantee of a job afterwards, but it does look amazing on your CV either way. They typically run from 1 to 3 years, and you're competing with other graduates on the scheme to be hired long term. So you have to make sure that you're performing really well throughout and really showcasing your skills and your willingness to learn. So there might be a chance to rotate around the different departments of a company, which is really helpful if you're not really sure what you want to do. Typically, the entry requirements to get onto a graduate scheme are at least a 2-1 with a really strong application. And generally, they offer higher salaries than entry-level graduate jobs. So for a graduate job, the deadlines are varied. You typically start applying just before you're about to leave university, but you can apply after you've left. So unlike the graduate schemes, they're not just in the larger companies, they're in small companies, they might be in startups, in a variety of sectors. The hiring practices are varied, so you might just have one interview, not necessarily have to go to an assessment centre or psychometric test. There might be some training involved, but you're more likely to be expected to hit the ground running and go straight into the role. And the wages tend to be less competitive than if you were doing a graduate scheme. And they're not advertised as prominently as graduate schemes. So you can find out about graduate jobs through networking, through looking on the employer's website, or by contacting companies directly. So if you're thinking of going into your first job or your graduate position, really good websites for starting your job search is the Prospects website, the Milk Round website, Student Job, etc. And obviously our website, but also you could be using recruiters. So there's specific recruiters for different industries, but you could look at some of the big ones like Reed, or university specific ones like Unitemps. You should also be making speculative applications. So what I mean by that is you should be contacting companies directly with your CV and your cover letter, and you could be asking them if they have any upcoming opportunities available. And that really shows your confidence and your initiative. You could be using social media to find jobs. So there's lots of groups online where you could be looking for jobs, such as London Jewish Jobs, etc. And like I mentioned before, attending networking events like our career networking. So other ways of securing your job is gaining experience. So you have a lot to talk about in the interview and a lot to put on your CV. So ways of gaining experience, you could do an internship, which is work experience for a fixed period of time in a company. It might be paid or unpaid, or they might pay your travel expenses or your lunch expenses only. But again, it gives you that experience and can lead to a job. Volunteering, it doesn't have to take up a lot of your time. It could just be one evening a week, for example, whilst you're job searching, but looks really good on your CV. It's more likely to be like within a charity. and it helps you to gain your transferable skills for jobs and could lead to a job. So work placements, so you could be doing a work placement as part of your degree. And if you're not, but you're at university, you could ask your course leader if you could do a work placement within your degree. And you could be speaking to your career service about their connections and organising a work placement. Or you could do work shadowing, and that means by observing a professional doing their job just for a day or two, just to find out a bit more about what their role involves and whether you want to go into it. So other things you could be doing now, networking and building relationships is really important. So make sure you're networking, so speaking to people, asking family, asking friends, asking your peers on your course if they know anybody they could introduce you to. Using social media to network, so make sure you're all signed up to LinkedIn, and as I mentioned, there's a LinkedIn workshop happening tomorrow. Go to your university events like university careers fairs, go to our student networking events and get in touch with employers afterwards, and go to company open days. So a lot of the larger firms have open days, usually online at the moment. And there's a section on the Prospects website where you can kind of see all the company open days. So get key information about organizations and think about which organizations you want to target and which ones you want to network with. And even if somebody doesn't know anybody, they might be able to introduce you to somebody that does, or could introduce you to somebody that might be able to help you. And also be networking with recruiters and getting to know recruitment agencies. So when you're actually making applications for your graduate job or graduate scheme, you might be using a CV and cover letter, or you might be using an application form. So make sure you've read the job advert and you're targeting at least 75% of what they're looking for, because that's what they will be using to shortlist you. So explain in your cover letter how your experience matches what they're looking for. Give some examples. The examples that you give don't just have to be from your work experience. So if you don't have so much paid work experience, you could draw on your voluntary work, you could draw on experience from your degree, or etc. Make sure that you show interest in the organization. So write a bit in your cover letter about why you're interested in them. And also make sure that you attend one of our CV workshops, which will go into the CV and cover letter in more detail, and have a Work Avenue advisor to review your CV and provide feedback. And we can kind of help you through creating a CV. So preparing for interview. So hopefully you'll all have lots of interviews coming up. So preparing for the interview in advance will really help you to make a good first impression and make you feel more confident in yourself and be able to put yourself across effectively. So before the interview, make sure you read the job description and person specification, and just kind of sit down and write some examples of how you can show each skill from what you've done in the past, and just kind of think of some examples that you could use in the interview of where you've done a similar task to what's in the job description. So make sure you've done a lot of research into the company in advance. So that could be looking at their website, it could be looking at their social media, it could be kind of researching around current affairs in the wider sector. Just so that if you're asked about your knowledge of the company, you can give a really good answer. And prepare answers to the typical interview questions, because they're likely to come up. So questions like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And also think about the questions that you'd like to ask the employer. So at the end, when they say to you, do you have any questions for us? You've got a few questions prepared. And on the Prospects website, again, there's a section for interview questions where it shows you the typical questions you might be asked in an interview and how to answer them. But we do mock interviews at Work Avenue. So if you have an interview coming up, please get in touch with us and we can ask you some questions based on what we think you might be asked in the interview. So video interviews are becoming a lot more popular since the pandemic. If you have a video interview coming up, make sure you know the format beforehand. So is it going to be live or is it going to be a pre-recorded interview? And again, prepare your responses. like in any type of interview, research the organization, do your standard preparation for the typical interview questions, make sure you've read the job description and the person spec, and you can give some examples. So make sure you choose your location wisely. So ideally at home, somewhere quiet. Make sure you're somewhere that has really good lighting and that you can be seen well, that there's no distractions. So if you're in a shared house or you live with your family, make sure that they're not going to be coming into the room throughout. Keep any pets or children away. Make sure you put your phone on silent, make sure your computer's not beeping, and make sure that you have a sensible background. So if you have a lot of things going on in the background, if you're using Zoom, you can go to blur background on the settings, for example, and make sure nobody can see your background, as you can see online. So make sure you dress appropriately. So even in video interviews where they can't see your whole body, just make sure you're dressed smart, at least from the waist upwards. And you could even be dressed completely smartly just to make yourself feel more confident. So the same as face-to-face. So make sure you're using positive body language. So make eye contact to the camera. Try not to fidget too much. Try to sit still. Try to sit straight. When the other person is talking, make sure you're smiling and looking interested. And test your connection beforehand. So make sure there's no technical issues or Zoom issues. You could do a practice run with an advisor, for example, or a family member. And just check your sound quality and your video is good, so you have no issues on the day. And make sure that you're somewhere that has good internet. We also have a borrow a laptop facility at Work Avenue if you need to borrow a laptop for an interview. So assessment centres, they're really popular with graduate schemes. So it's typically, it could be a day, or it could be just an afternoon, or it could be 2 days. Where you'll be doing a combination of tasks and activities to test your suitability for the job in question. So they could be in person, but they've moved a lot more to virtual since the pandemic. And you might be working individually or part of a group or a mixture of the two. So the exercises you could be doing could be case studies, could be group discussions, exercises. You might be given a presentation to do. You might have to do a psychometric test. You could be doing role play, or you could be doing written exercises. So tips for assessment centres. So if they've set you anything that you can do in advance, make sure that you've done it and that you're prepared ahead. So again, like in any interview, read the job description and person spec, so you know what they're looking for, and you can make sure you impress on the day and show those skills. So do a bit of research on them beforehand. So look at their website, look at their social media, look at any articles they've put out in the news. You could look at things like their business plan, their CSR, etc. And be prepared to share your views and ideas on that. If you've had an interview with the employer already, make sure you've asked for feedback. And if there was any weaknesses in your past interview, make sure that you act on this and you're improving. Also show commercial awareness, so research trends, competitors, the history of the company, etc. And prepare your smart outfit the night before so that you're not in a rush in the morning. Make sure you get plenty of sleep beforehand. I know it's tough if you have an assessment centre coming up. So if you're meeting them in person, plan your journey and make sure you get there 15 minutes early, just so that you're not flustered and you're not rushing, and kind of to get rid of any traffic errors or TfL errors. If it's online, still get there early and just check your software and your computer is working in advance. If there's anything that you're not sure about or you need clarifying, contact them to ask them any questions. And speak to your Work Avenue advisor or university for any kind of further guidance. And sometimes universities have a section on their website about assessment centres or psychometric tests. So aptitude tests, so you might be asked to do a test. So they could be things like numerical reasoning, verbal reasoning, situational judgment, etc. So if you have an aptitude test coming up, make sure that you're very prepared. and make sure you know a bit more about the type of test that you're going to be taking. And if you're not sure, make sure you ask. So there are some quite popular providers. So if you know the provider, you can practice some of the sample tests. If it's a written exercise, you could practice summarizing news articles, for example, into 200 words or into shorter sentences. And when you're practicing, you can time yourself doing it, so you've had some practice in time conditions. So when you're practicing, like focus on any weak areas. And again, the Prospect website is really useful because there's a section on psychometric tests which has practice tests on that you can take. So you might have to take part in a group discussion exercise. If you are, then make sure that you contribute. If you're quite shy, then just please make sure that you try to participate. And if you're quite outgoing, just make sure that you're not dominating over the other people, because they're assessing how well you work as a team and you work with people. Make sure you speak clearly and confidently, maybe have some practice in advance. Make sure you're listening to others and not interrupting when other people are speaking. Never put anybody else's views or opinions down. If there's quieter members in the room, then you could ask them what their opinion is. And just make sure that you're being friendly and polite to the other members of the team, and not being too assertive, but still putting your point across. So we have some time for questions. So does anybody have any questions they would like to ask either out loud or in the chat?
Hannah, I've got a couple of questions that came to me privately. So I don't know if you want to start with those, and then anyone else can just either message privately or put it in the main chat if you have questions. Somebody's mentioned that they are going to an assessment centre, but they have a learning disability. What should they do about that? Should they mention it? Should they not mention it? What's your advice?
Yeah, so typically graduate employers are really understanding about any disabilities. So 100% contact them as early as you can in advance, and let them know your requirements, and they will make sure that they put something in place for you. So yeah, so it's really important you tell them, and it won't stand against you.
Okay, thank you. Another one is, obviously I mentioned before, which someone's picked up on, that we don't generally access the large graduate schemes here via Work Avenue. Most of the employers we work with are smaller employers within the community or outside, smaller businesses who might have graduate jobs, but not the formal schemes and assessment centres. So the question is, how could Work Avenue help people who are going for assessment centre grad scheme type roles, which we don't have? In what ways could we help them to get through that process?
So we could give them some guidance beforehand about how to prepare, and we can kind of direct them to any sites to practice on. If you've been given any tasks to do in advance, we can help you with that. So sometimes you might have a presentation that you might want us to look at, or we could help you with kind of any interview questions.
Yeah, just to endorse that, exactly. We can help with all the areas of the process, and this is in general with the employment services we offer at Work Avenue. See, not every person we meet, we have the job for them, but it's about making you feel more confident in your job search as you go through the recruitment process, generally making applications so you'll become a smarter, more efficient job seeker in all of these ways, which hopefully will land you your next role. Okay, there's another question here in the chat. Looking to branch out into a different industry to my degree, would you say taking masters would be the best way to transfer skills and prepare for a different career? So
I would say it's 100% based on what it is you want to get into. So what I would recommend is to book an appointment with a Work Avenue advisor, and we can kind of sit down with you and kind of get some more information about you and what you're interested in. And we could talk you through your options and the best route to get there.
Great, thanks, Hannah. Yeah, I think sometimes, if I can just add, obviously master's courses can be quite expensive, and depending on what it is that you're wanting to do, you may be able to get in there via a job route or using transferable skills or something else. So it's definitely worth having a conversation before embarking on something that's quite, financially heavy.
Yeah, exactly.
Here we have another question. May I ask how Work Avenue can help with networking for someone who moved alone? Are you saying you've moved from another country and you don't have many connections here? I assume is the question. Yes. Okay.
Yes. So we have our networking events that are happening in the spring term. We also have a LinkedIn workshop that's happening tomorrow, which can help you to understand how to use LinkedIn to network. And we have a separate networking workshop. In your one-to-one with an advisor, we can kind of give you some tips on how to network. And if you tell us a bit more about what you're looking for, we might be able to introduce you to a professional that's working in that area, so you can kind of get some advice as well. Anything else to add to that, yeah?
No, I think all of those points. Yes, we do have a very sort of good network of professionals in different industries here. So often when we speak to people, might be able to put you in touch with someone to talk to you, them to talk to you, or you to talk to them about what you're thinking of doing. Generally speaking to people, get the ball rolling, people introduce you to other people. Also, it's not only about who can offer you a job, it's also about who can give you sort of advice, guidance, introduce you to the next person, and it goes from there. And we see generally so many jobs are found via networking in one way or another, either face-to-face networking, via LinkedIn, by somebody just remembering that someone spoke to them and they were looking for someone. And if you're going more for the graduate job route, where sometimes the recruitment process is a little bit more informal than the assessment centres, very often the employers will also recruit via networking. So they'll speak to people and they might say, I'm looking for somebody, do you know anyone? So if you are talking to people, that's the best way to move forward. Every opportunity is generally connected to a person. So the more people you know, hopefully the more potential opportunities you will be able to access as well. One other thing to mention there is that last year we did run a series of webinars for different sectors for graduates, where we had people who started working in those fields fairly recently. All of those webinars, I believe, are on our website, so you can have a look and maybe watch them if there's certain sectors they were interested in. And we are definitely planning to do similar activity, either remotely or in person, this coming year as well. So you will hear about all our services.
Yeah, and you should get an email nearer the time about when our networking events will be happening for students. But like Yael mentioned, you can go to YouTube and then type in Work Avenue, and you can see last year's event and watch the speakers, and always get in touch with them via LinkedIn if there's anybody that spoke that you're interested in. So I've just had a question: how can we book appointments about future work opportunities? So we're really happy to speak to all of you after the event. So just get in touch with us by either calling us from the number on our website, or you can go to our website and then click employment, and then it takes you to book an appointment, and you can do it via the website. Or you can email reception@theworkavenue.org.uk, and my email address is also on the final slide. I'll just put it up again. So if there's anything that you think of that you want to ask me directly, my email's there. I'm Hannah Dahan. So we really look forward to helping you further.
Great, thanks, Hannah. A couple more questions I've had in. Someone saying they have no idea what they want to do next. Obviously, all the information given today has been very helpful, but it's most helpful applied in a specific context. So if somebody's at the stage before that and they have no idea what they want to do. What would you suggest? How might we be able to help them, or them be able to help themselves?
Yeah, sure. So we're all trained careers advisors in the employment advice team. So you should really book an appointment with one of us, and we can kind of give you at least an hour to talk through your options. But like I mentioned in the earlier slide, you could be doing a bit of research in advance of your appointment. So you could be going to websites like the Prospects website, and they've got a really good careers quiz on there where you can kind of answer questions based on what you like and what you don't like, and then it kind of gives you some suggestions of careers you might be suitable for. Or you can go onto the jobs profile section on the Prospects website, which kind of gives you some more information about each career, what skills you need for each, how to get into them, the best websites for looking for jobs in those areas, etc.
Yes. Thanks, Hannah. It's true. And another question is, someone saying if they've been offered a job, their first job after graduation, it's not really what they want to do. What's the value in taking a job that you don't really want as your first job following graduation?
So I think it would still be really valuable because you will gain transferable skills. So, I mean, if your job in the future that you want to get into requires things like communication skills, technical skills, you can gain them from any kind of job that you're in. And then you might be able to, say, for example, you're working in a company and you want to move into a different department. That might be easier if you're actually working in the company. So there's lots of ways that you can progress in your transferable skills, but also progress in your career by just kind of taking a job to build on your experience.
Yes, and also just to add from my perspective, I guess, of speaking to employers, often they like to see that someone has had some experience in the workplace already. So it doesn't necessarily matter what it is that you have done. It's the fact that you've taken a job, you're willing to work to get started and just become more familiar sort of with the workplace. And even if it's something that's not your ideal role, a lot of employers know that people aren't going to stay in their jobs forever anymore. They do want a level of commitment, but with graduates, it's often known that people will come, gain some good experience for a year or two on something, and then move on after that. So if you feel that the formal graduate route isn't for you, or if you're not sure what you want to do and you want to try something out, that's also something that can be quite helpful. Okay, another question is, you mentioned apprenticeships briefly, Hannah. Yeah. Are they worth considering as a graduate? What would an employer think if someone who's a graduate decides that they'd like to take an apprenticeship?
Yes. So as a graduate, you would be more looking at kind of master's level apprenticeships where you're doing a master's at the same time. But these are very competitive and they're only in certain areas. So what I would suggest is if you go to the Prospects website, they've got a section on graduate apprenticeships, and you can see whether there's an apprenticeship in the field that you're kind of interested in. But also apply for some different options because they're so competitive.
Mm. And do you think an employer would say, why are you applying for this if you have a degree, or are they seen equivalent as a master's if it's specific type of apprenticeships?
Yeah, so if it's a postgraduate apprenticeship, you would be doing a master's at the same time. So it would be exactly the same as a master's, but you'd be getting the on-the-job experience at the same time. So you'd have a master's and experience, and you wouldn't have the student debt. So it's kind of a win-win situation.
And somebody's been applying for quite a few roles using their CV they're talking about. So I'm guessing this is going to be more for jobs than grad schemes, which is generally with an application form. They haven't specified, but the point they're making is that they're not really getting very far after submitting their CV. Is there something wrong with their CV? Is there something that we can suggest that they would change on their CV? How could we help with that?
Yeah, of course. So when you're sending your CV, a lot of mistakes that people make is just sending the same CV for every job and not changing it every time. So really take a bit of time to read the job description, read the person spec, and think about what the employer is actually looking for. What skills can you make reference to? What things in the job description can you show that you've done before? And you're kind of slightly changing your CV every time you apply. So what I also recommend is coming to our CV workshop, which will cover the CV in more detail. It's around a 3-hour session, very intensive on the CV and the cover letter. And also when you meet with your Work Avenue advisor, send your CV in advance and we'll have a look at it and we can discuss with you any kind of feedback we have in your CV. And you can have an unlimited amount of appointments. So you can have a follow-up appointment where we look at your second draft, or we can kind of look via email. We also have a CV library, so we can send you some samples of CVs based on the kind of areas that you're interested in. So you have kind of idea of what a CV should look like. And there's lots of resources online as well. So if you go to the Prospects website, there's a section called, I think it's called CVs and cover letters. And there's lots of samples of student CVs on there too.
Great, yes, definitely we can help on CVs, and you can see if you are applying for jobs where you're getting to in the process. So if you're applying for a lot of jobs with your CV and you're not really hearing back, then it might be thinking about maybe how your CV is written. Also, it might be the methods you're using to apply for the jobs. There's no really one factor thing, I would say, on this, because you're dealing with people and so there's no certainties, but you can get an idea of what might be happening by the stage in the process you're getting to. So if you're doing quite well and getting good responses to your CV, but then you're not getting through the interviews, then it might be thinking about something to do with interview technique, or maybe thinking about answering the questions a little differently, potentially, based on feedback that you're getting. On that note, we have a question of, if somebody is asked in an interview, what do they want to be doing in the next 5 years, but they have no idea, how would you suggest answering that question?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So I would always say that you want to stay with that company, because if you look like that you don't want to stay with them and you want to leave and join one of their competitors, then they might think, why should we invest in training this person? So they're more likely to be looking for somebody long term. So I would say, always say that you want to continue working with them, and you could just say you're very ambitious and you hope to progress in the role and learn a lot from the company and offer a lot of your transferable skills.
Yes, I would agree with that, and also, or you can also say you want to be working in that sector longer term, as Hannah says, to build up on your skills, to gain experience in this field of work, and to, I guess, feel more confident in building your career in this particular field. If you think you're not going to stay with a company, or you don't have to specifically mention them, you can mention them, but you just want to sound committed to this field of work that you are embarking on. Okay, Hannah, another question that's come in is, if somebody is not just graduated university, can they still apply for graduate schemes, or is there sort of a deadline by which you need to apply for grad schemes?
Yeah, sure. So that's a really good question. So it depends on the graduate scheme. So say, for example, the civil service graduate scheme, you can apply for it at any age or any time after graduation. But some graduate schemes have like a 2-year limit of when you'd be able to apply for them. However, if you're thinking of if you want to apply for a graduate scheme, but you graduated some time ago, you might want to do a career changer scheme instead. And a lot of companies, for example, Aldi, have career changer schemes. So thank you so much, everybody, for their questions. So I'd like to introduce my ex-client, Natalie Sadie, who's going to tell you a bit more about her and also a bit more about the Student Ambassador scheme that we are running.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. I'm Natalie. I originally got involved with Work Avenue with Hannah last year. It was actually about this time last year when I was applying for placements. So I go to the University of Birmingham and I study biomedical science, and I was looking to do a placement year. So I was like busy applying for all these placements, and I had a chat with Hannah about application and interview prep, which was really helpful for me. We kind of sat down and went through, I think I'd basically written applications, and we just sat down and kind of went through what I had written, what I should include, what I shouldn't include. And that was really helpful for me. And then I ended up getting a placement at Pfizer, which is where I am now. And it's going really well, I like to think. But I'm enjoying it a lot. And yeah, I got a lot out of my sessions with Hannah. So like, I would really recommend like getting involved with Work Avenue and trying to kind of have, if you have applications and so on, so like reaching out and just even if you have any questions, because it definitely made the whole thing much more clear for me. And then since then, I kind of found that I got so much out of working with Work Avenue, and it helped me get my placement. Now that I kind of wanted to make sure that other students at unis were able to have the same support and kind of knew about the support that Work Avenue offered. So I set up, help with Work Avenue, tried to set up the student ambassador scheme, where we have ambassadors from different universities around the country, and they kind of take, they kind of help promote Work Avenue at their universities. So whether that's posting just about the general events that Work Avenue run on a day-to-day basis, or kind of the webinars like this one, and so on, like just lots of different things. So I essentially just wanted to come on and offer to any of you that if you wanted to become a student ambassador, we're looking for kind of like lots of the student ambassadors that we had last year graduated. So we're looking for kind of some new student ambassadors from each from different universities around the country. So if you wanted to get involved, to definitely reach out. And I don't know if Hannah, you have the link to the sign up, maybe like I don't know if it can be sent out or put in the chat or something. If people wanted to sign up, there's a link that you can kind of fill in.
Yeah,
sure. To sign up to that. But it's a really good opportunity, I think, for both Work Avenue and the student ambassadors. Obviously, if you're a student ambassador, you get kind of direct access into all of the webinars and support the Work Avenue offer, as well as it's just, I mean, a great thing to put on your CV. It doesn't take a lot of time up each month. I would say not more than like a few hours each month. It's all online really, so you can just, it's all about kind of promoting online, social media, through your JSOC at your university, just basically making yourself known. I know at Birmingham we have a kind of WhatsApp group with all the Jewish students in my year, and I'm pretty sure that each year group at Birmingham has one. So that's a really good place that we find at Birmingham to post different events that are going on. I always try and post them on the Birmingham group chat to see if anybody wants to get involved. So essentially it's just about posting them, reaching out to different people, and trying to get them engaged in Work Avenue if they want any support. So yeah, it doesn't take up a lot of time, and obviously it looks really good on your CV showing that you kind of got involved in things outside of just your university degree. Very easy for kind of, I think, maximal output for you. So yeah, I just thought I'd come on and talk about that a little bit, and if anyone wants to get involved, I mean, I'm happy to talk to anyone if they want to like chat to me about kind of getting involved further. I'm sure Hannah, etc., would be willing to talk to you about it as well. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Natalie. So the link is to apply for the Student Ambassador Scheme is in the chat and also on the screen now. So any final questions for us or for Natalie?
Can't see any other questions, Hannah. Just to tell everybody, the webinar will be available after today if you want to watch it again, or if you know anybody else who would like to watch this webinar, please direct them to our website where it will be uploaded.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for coming, and lovely to meet you, and hopefully see you soon.
Thank you so much. It was really useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Natalie.